My name is Noelle Ray Ortega. I am a Sanders delegate for the 4th Congressional District. We have several speakers here today, some elected officials, and members of the Peace Action group here in Milwaukee. We have a recorded statement from the executive director of World Beyond War, who is putting up the billboards.
Why would we work with all of these other great groups and individuals to put up a billboard near a Democratic National Convention, a billboard that says 3% of U.S. military spending could end starvation on Earth? Because almost nobody knows that fact. The U.S. government spends some $1.25 trillion a year on militarism, not just the $750 billion that you hear about going to the Pentagon. Recently, Congress voted overwhelmingly in both houses against moving just 10% of that $740 billion Pentagon budget, or $74 billion, to human needs. The majority of what Congress does, which is militarism, it does with bipartisan harmony and the total absence of gridlock. If the opposite of pro is con, what's the opposite of progress? Congress is not about to let us vote on war or peace. So our alternative is every other nonviolent tool available, including filling the streets with people and filling them with billboards.
Woo! All right, so I think we can all agree that most Americans, Democrats, Republicans, want a more peaceful future so that we can reallocate funds to our people and so that we are not creating violence all over the world. This is something that is bipartisan. It goes across all different demographics. We want peace. The people want peace. Recently there was an amendment pushed through by Mark Pocan and Barbara Lee from California, and majority of Democrats voted it down along with the Republicans. Reach out to your elected officials and demand that they vote how the American people want to see their funds spent. Not on bombs, not on killing people, but reallocating those funds here in the United States for our people.
Well, as I was listening to David Swanson's statement, I was thinking about how everybody in the world wants security. For the United States military, it means more bombs and spending more and more and more on this insane militarism. Unfortunately, only 93 votes, all Democrats, voted for that resolution. 93. But there is something else that's even more phenomenal that's happening on the legislative level, and that's the proposal for a $350 billion cut annually in the military budget. Yeah. $350 billion. Yes. And so this resolution would present a policy change. So that is the next move, is to rally around that particular resolution.
I'm a county supervisor. We battle over every $1,000 in our budget for parks, buses, healthcare. The thing we have to tell our constituents is there's just not enough money. Well, actually there is plenty of money. It's just not going to government for the needs of the people. It's going to special interests, and one of the biggest of all the big special interests is the military-industrial complex that Dwight Eisenhower warned us about 60 years ago. It was true then, it's even more true now. The Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors urges Congress to cut military spending to the extent possible, allocate the surplus towards domestic functions such as clean energy, transportation, education, and be further resolved, the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors request the county clerk to provide this resolution to federal elected officials who represent any part of Milwaukee County. It is our job to make sure our elected officials represent the people, not the military-industrial complex.
And Trump has been pulling out of all kinds of treaties, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, the Iran Nuclear Agreement. The U.S. has never ratified the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. So there are some amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act. The Senate put in the $10 million. The House, the Democratic House, had amendments added that were passed to prohibit funding for any such tests. There's a lot of groups that are working against this testing, and I think that we could join in and try to stop this testing. Thank you.
People of color, indigenous people, are disproportionately affected by military spending. It affects everybody, but these people are disproportionately affected.
On March 23rd, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, called for a global ceasefire, saying at that point, our only enemy is the COVID-19. Steve Shea mentioned the military-industrial complex. Some refer to it as the military-industrial congressional complex because Congress is really complicit in this, both parties. You've heard of various cuts, the idea of a 10% cut, that would be nice, $74 billion. We're nonpartisan, but can I say it was Bernie was the main one proposing that.
Yes!
We need to build the people pressure that's equivalent to the military-industrial complex pressure. That's the thing. They outspend us, they outlobby us, they're good at it, and they never give up, and they're well funded. We have to use people power to counteract that. But really it's our best chance in 30 years, that is since the end of the Cold War, to try and push for new priorities in our government spending, and in particular to divert the war economy to human needs. Thank you.
U.S. militarism is not exclusive to the Republican Party. Both Republicans and Democrats have perpetuated immoral wars all over the world and have approved our bloated military budget. Today, we are calling on the Democratic nominee, Vice President Joe Biden, to adopt a more principled, peaceful foreign policy. I will read the following letter penned by more than 50 national progressive, anti-war, and faith organizations. Dear Vice President Joe Biden, the American people are looking for a leader who will turn the page on 9/11 policies that have resulted in an endless cycle of war, countless lives lost, increased global instability, and the violation of American civil liberties and human rights. We call on you to commit to ending wasteful military spending and reducing Pentagon spending by at least $200 billion annually. We call on you to reduce the outside influence of private contractors at the Pentagon and the production of new nuclear weapons, cancel Space Force, and to prioritize the federal budget towards meeting the basic needs of the American people here at home. We call on you to build a future in which all Palestinians and Israelis live under full equality by upholding a foreign policy that centers human rights and dignity for all people. We call on you to stop the military and political campaigns aimed at regime change that have borne disaster in Iraq, Libya, Syria, and elsewhere in the past 2 decades. We call on you to end broad-based sanctions against countries like Iran and Venezuela. We call on you to close the Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. We call on you to prioritize human rights in our foreign policy. The U.S. should stop providing security aid and arms to authoritarian or repressive governments that systematically violate human rights, such as Saudi Arabia. We call on you to repeal the Muslim, African, refugee, and asylum bans. I would also like to add that the U.S. should abolish ICE because it is an abusive organization with a history of human rights violations since its inception.
Yes!
It is time to end all wars. It is time to end all violence. It is time to end needless suffering. It is time for justice. It is time for peace. Please do go to codepink.org/letter to Biden, sign and share. Thank you.
We're focused here in Milwaukee looking to decrease the funding for the Milwaukee Police Department, which has about 45% of the city's budget at $297 million.
We can all agree that we need less violence in the world, in our city, overseas. We want to invest in people. We want our government to invest in people. That's what it means when we say we want to defund the military or defund the police. We want to invest in people and not in violence. Next Sunday, August 16th at 3 p.m., we are organizing an event that will be live on Facebook and here in person. Please sign the petitions. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.